Hey, what's up guys? So, gonna do a different kind of video today that I haven't really seen done on YouTube. And I'm gonna try and give some tips for offense. And the best way I figured to do that is to go in Guild War and look at some defenses and kind of talk about what units I would bring and how I would deal with them. Because you can't really just be like, oh, well, just do this in this situation, do this in this situation. So, what we're gonna do is, the guild we're fighting today is Replicant. Yeah. I'm not doing this to make fun of them. Just want to make that clear. This is like for educational purposes. There are all kinds of ranges of people that play this game. Some people aren't as good as others are. Obviously, we are a top tier guild. So, we do this to most guilds that we fight that aren't in the top 10. It's just how it works. So we'll go through and I'll look at some defenses, you know. By the way, like, if there's any, like, kind of hate comments or saying this person sucks or this person's stupid, excuse me, in the comments, I'm just going to delete your comments, so don't bother. So we'll just start up here in the corner, and I'll kind of look at their defense here. So right off the bat, the round one, you can tell, like, the only real threat there is Sid. Okay, but there's no fire unit to protect, like, the two water threats. So, and looking at this, like, I would and there's no speed buff for Sid to let him hit anything he wants. So, for up there, I would bring some kind of tanky water unit to begin with, or tanky ice. So, like a Crow, or Angelica, Deanne, anything like that, Tywin, hell, Crowsit, and I would put that on the team. And force him into attacking that. That's really all you need to do. And then, in addition to that, I would bring, like, depending on if it's Angelica, she has her own sustained, and I would bring, like, 2 Earth DPS to deal with the Dizzy, and I would or a Cleanser. Probably a Cleanser, and then some kind of solid Earth DPS of my own. Maybe, like, Biken, or Euphine, or Charles, you know, my own Sid, you know, something like that, and that's how I would deal with that top team. The second team, like, as soon as Biken's level 50, I'm not really considering, like, what level, I'm just looking at the team compositions here. Lorenas are generally slow, so they're easy to outspeed. The only wild card would be Biken here, so you want to bait the Biken as well. However, there's no water threat here. I'm just going to keep saying water, because I say water over ice every time. So there's no water threat here. So, what that tells me is, like, I don't have to necessarily bring a water unit to bait the Biken, because there's no water threat or I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. Basically, what I would do against this team down here, I would bring probably 2 fire units because there's no water threat on that team, and then bait that Biken into something else since I'm already using a water bait up top. Does that make sense? Because, you know, the chances are you might not have 2 water bait units. So I would probably bring, like, in my case, like Crimson Armin down on the bottom to tank Lorena and to tank Biken, and then I would bring 2 fire units to guarantee that Biken hits my Crimson Armin. Make sense? So that's how I would deal with those. Let's go down here. So, like, these teams are a little bit, well, that bottom team is obviously not threatening at all. You bring some kind of Cleanser and just a full Earth team and you win. Or Earth and MLs. Like, there's really no threat there at all. And then at the top, round 1 could be a little iffy. Violet Fat Cat is a really powerful combo, as people know. Violet, like, that only really gets shut down by a Dizzy, but Violet does really good against Dizzy now. Safe bet against that would be, like, of course you could Says Cleave it or whatever. I would probably, since there's no sustain there, I would bring 2 healers and then just bring some kind of my own DPS and have, you know, like Montmorency, Destina, and then bring some kind of bruiser. And that's how I would deal with that, pretty safely. I mean, if you can guarantee you outspeed that, you can Says Cleave it. You could J-Kisei Cleave it. And like, those teams beat a lot of teams that don't have sustain that are just fast. So that's how I would deal with those. For here, that top team, Luna is very scary on offense, but generally you can guarantee yourself outspeeding her. All these units don't have amazing base speed, so you can outspeed this team relatively easy. I would probably bring, like, my Bale and Dizzy. There's no sustain there. And then some kind of healer. And just kind of weed down their HP slowly. Debuff Luna. I would make sure I bring a strip just in case that Luna is on immunity if I was the first one attacking. If I wasn't the first one attacking, I would know if they're on immunity or not because they would tell me. So that's the round 1 there. Round 2, another team that's really not threatening. Violet could probably solo that team, to be honest. Any good Earth DPS with some kind of cleanser again. Now this is an interesting team. So for that round 1, again, it just comes to really outspeeding. I would probably just tank that team, bring something with really high resistance, and I would try to bait that Says into something. So I would try to bring some kind of dark tank. I feel like right here, like ML Zerato would be really good against this top team. But if you're running high resist, high immunity, or a full team on immunity, since there's no strip there, you're fine. Because Says isn't going to have a stun to hit if your team is completely on immunity. For the round 2, again, Luna's scary on her own, just because she can one-shot your DPS. So again, I would run a really bulky team with a... probably need Crimson Arm in there, and some kind of healer cleanser. But that team, like, anybody can lose to that team if they get unlucky. Probably would bring Dizzy there, just to try and CC that Luna. Let's go to the fort here. Okay, these are just... you know, whatever teams, but yeah, there's really no damage threat on round 1, and round 2 you just have to worry about Assassin Collie, so make sure she's hitting something that you want her to hit. In round 1, you just make sure Lorena's hitting something you want to hit. That's really all you have to do with that. I mean, those aren't really optimal teams, but and over here, like, that round 1 could potentially be pretty scary, I think, and round 2 is not bad either. Violet's really good paired with Dizzy. In the same sense, though, you could bait that Violet into a Corral, bring 2 good Earth DPS, or Earth DPS and a Cleanser, and you win that round 2. Round 1, like, Biken's really scary. I would probably bring something that could take her damage on, that's on immunity. This is a guarantee that I wouldn't get bleeds. There's no strip there, so I would probably bring like a high single target damage unit and then try and make sure Biken hits something that's on immunity. That way she doesn't kill it. Okay, over here, Maid Chloe. This top team, like, I would just bring Dizzy against. There's a good chance Dizzy's going to outspeed everything there. Biken might outspeed her, but I would just have some kind of damage mitigation with my Dizzy, just in case. And I would my Dizzy's on immunity, so Biken usually doesn't one-shot her. And then round 2, there's the 2 damage dealers are fire, so I would just bring some water units, and good game there. Another Araminta team with no strippers, so just run immunity up top, and you win. Round 2, there's no earth threat there, so you can safely bring ice units to deal with those. Okay, this top team's a tri-element team, which is what I would recommend trying to run if you can. Usually to deal with those, I just bring really high sustain. So I would definitely bring something to hold the Violet, because he's the biggest threat there. And if I could, I would bring like an earth unit to hold the Violet and the Soul. And try and maybe bring solid fire units. Since Dizzy hits everybody anyways, you don't really need to tank her. So I would try and bring an earth and 2 fires into this if I had the optimal team. Like a Katie's maybe, to deal with the cleansing. And nothing would focus her. And then I would bring like some kind of solid single target damager. Or bring my own Dizzy. But thing is, I don't like bringing Dizzy into Violet anymore. Violet just eats her alive. So I'd probably bring something else. And then for round 2, there's a lot of AoE damage there, so I would probably bring my Violet there. Just to kind of solo Bellona, and I would just make sure I focus the SS Acades first. And that's this whole side, pretty much. Hopefully I'm going through this relatively quick. I don't want it to take too long. Decent top team up here, but again, there's no strip with Araminta, so you just run immunity and you win. Down here, pretty much same thing. Just make sure Kayron is hitting something that you want him to hit. And I'll probably bring some kind of immunity or a cleanser on high resist, because usually Oxalot's is fast, he doesn't have effectiveness. So you can reliably resist his silence if you ever run to him on defense, and then just cleanse the silences off your team. So this round one, like, it's pretty solid team, I think. You just want to make sure, like, I would bring Corvus to this team, hands down. Corvus could probably solo this team, depending on how, like, if that MLkin sustains or not. But Corvus, and then you could bring probably 2 DPS with him, because Kisei doesn't reset the cooldown on Corvus's S3. I would just try and get her focused on him, and then maybe bring some sustain. Like, realistically, I could do it with sustain and Corvus, and that's it. But I'll probably bring some kind of bruiser. And then for round 2, this team's a little bit better thought out, because if you bring a fire unit to deal with the Vildred, then whatever, but I would probably just bring some kind of strong Earth Bruiser and sustain. Euthine would eat that team alive. Violet would probably destroy that team. And then I would make sure to bring something to deal with Luna's damage, whether that be Dizzy to debuff her out the gate, or a Clurry to taunt her, Bale to sleep her, you know, just something that you know can outspeed Luna to deal with her damage threat. Because you can tank Luna's S3, but it's just not recommended. You're probably going to end up losing a unit, so I wouldn't put myself in that situation. But if I was, I would probably bring Crimson Armin with Arius to mitigate some of that damage. That round 1 looks pretty fun. When you have Ruel paired with Luna, it's actually really scary. So I would probably just hard CC this team and bring some kind of single target damage for Ruel. So I'll definitely bring Dizzy up here for 1, because I'm pretty sure Dizzy would outspeed all of those, just to get those debuffs up. And then I would bring maybe like Biken or something that can delete that Ruel while keeping everything else crowd controlled, and then some kind of sustain. It's probably how I would do that. Round 2, Sez is just really bad on defense. Maid Chloe, you just need a stripper. So I would probably bring like my Sage Bale and Sezin, and some damage dealers, or a sustain and a bruiser, something like that, just to deal with that. I actually fought Dave, so I think I'm just going to skip over that. See, this guy's got some successful defenses on his round 1, and that team can actually be very strong. One thing that's nice about running Diane with Violet is just that her attack buff is 3 turns long. So when Violet uses his S2 following up on Diane, he's still got 2 turns of attack buff. So the way I would deal with that is I'd probably bring Earth and some sustain. Like, I would bring like Euphine, a cleanser, and some kind of damage mitigation, because Diane really doesn't have high sustain through Rod. So I would probably bring like Euphine, and then maybe like Crimson Armin, and then Destina, for example. Or Crow, instead of Crimson Armin. Something to tank that Violet's damage would probably be smarter. And then this other team, obviously, it's another Araminta that doesn't have a strip with it, so you just run immunity and you win. Let's skip over Dave. Now these are pretty scary teams here. This round 1, the way I deal with these is I bring Destina and I bring Montmorency with usually Violet, because Violet has its own self-cleanse. I have decent resist on Destina and Montmorency, so basically I just let all of them go and I cleanse myself. And usually I'll put HP boots on my Violet, just in case I don't survive that initial burst. That way, like, stuns go off, everything's still got a decent amount of HP, and then I cleanse. That's how I deal with those. A lot of other people, they just outspeed the Bale, and they'll J-Kisei cleave or Sez cleave or something. But that's really the only 2 ways you have to deal with this that I can think of. If you got another way you could deal with this, drop it in the comments. I don't have an Oxalot, so I can't do those fun cleaves. And it's really hard to do that with any way else with Bale there. So I just tank the damage and cleanse. And run 2 cleansers. The round 2, now that's a scary round 2. Probably deal with the same way I just talked about with the other Ruel and Luna. Bring something to make sure you can tank the damage. I would probably bring Dizzy here to mitigate the damage coming out from Luna at the start of the fight. And then bring something to delete that Ruel. And maybe, the thing about having Kin there is Watcher Shuri's not really a safe pick, so I'd probably bring Baiken. That's how I would deal with that. But still really iffy team. Then down here, it's another Luna. And this Luna's got Crimson Armand, so Luna's really the only threat here. So as long as you can disable her somehow, probably Dizzy. Bring Dizzy, make sure you're cutting her damage somehow. Clurry, taunt her right off the gate. You know, just make sure she's not hitting something with full potential. So you need to like outspeed her. Unless you're going to tank with Crimson Armand or something, but I still wouldn't even recommend doing that. Then round 2, that's not a bad team, I would think. Destina's there to deal with, you know, any way you would disable the Ravi. But there's no real threat on Earth damage there, so I would probably make my DPS against this team an ice unit. So I would probably bring like my Luna, for example, and then bring my Destina to tank that Ravi, and then just cleanse and then take everything out with Luna. I don't see too many issues there, but that's how I would deal with that. And Alexa. That's interesting. So yeah, just bring a strong Earth unit up top. And down the bottom. A little bit better coverage there. But you could just bring a Kin and probably solo that team with Kin. So, strong fire unit down there. And we'll go check out these ones. Hopefully I'm going through this quick. So yeah, round 1, I would just bring a strong ice DPS with some sustain and a cleanse, like Montmorency or something. Maybe something to bait the Kin into, like Destina. That's how I would deal with that. Round 2, let's try to outspeed. If not, bring immunity units. Over here, there's really no damage threat on the round 2, I can tell right off the bat, or the round 1. There's like no damage there. So, if you can bring one unit that does a decent amount of damage with some sustain, then you win on both of these teams. Maybe even 2 units with some sustain, because there's really no damage threat there. And for here, I would just try to bait that Axe God into a light unit, and then bring some kind of strong Earth DPS. And then for round 2, same thing with all Lunas. You want to disable their damage if you can. If you can't, you need to make sure you have some kind of damage mitigation or a revive mechanic or something to guarantee you don't lose something. And I did this fight up here. For round 1, dealing with Vildreds, I just bring Crimson Armand, Dizzy, and Angelica usually. I just stay at full health and try to make sure the Vildred dies when I'm at full health. And since Dizzy's, and then Deanne just can't out-sustain the damage from Dizzy. The rod only heals one person every turn. So if you're constantly AoEing them, they're eventually going to die. And then for round 2 here, I just brought my high resist team. Because Dizzy does have a strip here, you know, you can't really rely on immunity. So just make sure that you don't die from a round of burns, and you can come around after the stun, cleanse everything off. Or just make sure you outspeed and delete them with Anox slots. Another Luna team. Here I'll just bring strong Earth DPS again. Make sure you disable that Luna. And then round 2, just strong fire unit. Take care of that. This dude's actually really tough. It's that round 1 that's also really scary. It's hard to deal with. And this guy actually did a really good job building his defenses, because I was gonna fight this guy, but I couldn't bring my Dizzy Crimson Arm into both teams. And that's how he set up his defense. And that's a smart way of setting up your defense. If you can limit what whoever's attacking you is gonna bring, to where they want to bring certain units to deal with both of these teams, are in a good spot, because like I can only deal with one of these teams with my roster. I can't guarantee I win against both of them. Like, I need Crimson Armament and Dizzy against both of these teams. I can't bring them against both. So kudos to this guy for how he set up his defense. This is probably the best defense I've seen in this entire guild. But yeah, there's ML units there, I get it. But it's just really well thought out. So, I personally couldn't deal with this. Like I said, I would bring Crimson Armament and Dizzy to both of these teams. Other option would be probably to extra turn cleave the round 2, which I don't have in my arsenal. So I can't J-Kisei cleave that. That's probably what I would do. And then bring Dizzy and Crimson Armament in round 1 if I had it. But if you are like in the hundreds or so in your Guild War rankings, once they kind of fix themselves again, if you run into a guy like this and you can't guarantee you can beat him, just don't fight him. That's the best advice I could give you, because you're going to need some pretty OP teams to beat those. Then up here, decent round 1. It's actually a really good round 1 team, because normally if I saw a Surmi on defense, I would definitely bring Dizzy to shut her down, but there's a Violet there kind of protecting her. So you just want to make sure you can tank that Violet's damage and you can tank that Surmia's damage. That's the best advice I can give there. And some kind of cleanse for Dizzy, or full immunity on your team. In round 2, it's an interesting round 2. But it shouldn't be too hard to tank that with some Fire Bruisers. Like, pretty much Bale is gonna go first, so just make sure you have some Fire Bruisers on your team so they can miss those defense breaks. Or have immunity, you know, still, but Bale's gonna strip, so. Best route there would probably be some decent sustain, maybe an Arius holder to mitigate some damage, and Fire Bruiser. And up top, just bring ice units. Like, bring Dizzy up there and you win, pretty much. And then round 2. Clurry and Baiken are actually really scary together, because Baiken will hit whatever Clurry debuffs. So, potentially, like, you're going to lose a unit there. Like, that's what that team is built to do, is to take out a unit. So I would just do whatever I can to outspeed that. Or just bring a really tanky team. And make sure, like, maybe I would bring Montmorency there, since she has like 170 resist, paired with Crimson Armament. But okay, so yeah, I'm gonna end up cutting that out, but as I was saying, Baiken's gonna hit what Clurry hits, so she's got a free defense break to hit. And even if immunity's there, it doesn't matter, so I would probably bring something with really high resist to tank that, and resist the defense break, and then have some damage mitigation for Baiken, because she still does a lot of damage even if there's no bleeds there. So I would probably bring like Crimson Armament on Arius, or another tank on Arius, to make sure that unit doesn't die. And then over here, interesting team. It just really depends on how fast they are. I would bring another high resist team up top, and down at the bottom I would just bring some strong fire units to deal with Baiken. That's pretty much it. I mean, kind of rushed through them somewhat at the end there, but I just kind of wanted to go through some defenses here. Shout out to Replicant for letting me use your defenses, quote unquote use. Am I getting attacked yet? No. But alright, if you guys enjoyed this, let me know, and I'll continue doing them for these first few weeks of Guild War, because like I'm not going to do a Guild War video. Like, this Guild War was so boring for me, like, and it would have been boring to watch. Like the 7 reroll fight, like that was a pretty good fight, but Like the other two, I just pretty much autoed. So it's nothing anybody really wants to see, so I'm not going to do that. So if you want to see more things like this, then I will continue doing these. But if you want to see me pub stomp, let me know, and like I'll do that too, I guess. But you guys have a good one. Later.